The Thompson family's SUV wound down a narrow, unmarked road, thick trees closing in from both sides. Greg, gripping the wheel tighter than necessary, muttered under his breath. The highway detour had promised to shave an hour off their trip, but now, after nearly 30 minutes of driving through unfamiliar terrain, he was beginning to regret it. "We should have stayed on the main road," Linda, his wife, said, peering out at the gloom. Their teenage son, Eric, sat in the back, earbuds in oblivious. Meanwhile, their younger daughter, Sophie, pressed her face against the window, watching the rain snake down the glass. Then they saw a town nestled in the valley like it had been waiting for them. There were no signs leading to it, no indication it even existed. Yet here it was. Old-fashioned streetlights flickered along the cobblestone roads, illuminating quaint little shops and Victorian-style homes. A single gas station stood at the town's entrance, its neon-open sign buzzing faintly. Relieved, Greg pulled in, but the moment the SUV rolled to a stop, an eerie silence wrapped around them like a shroud. The town had been lit up as if alive, yet there were no people in sight, no movement behind the frosted windows, no distant hum of conversation or traffic. "I don't like this," Sophie whispered. A bell chimed as Linda pushed open the gas station's door. Inside, an old man stood behind the counter, his skin ashen and his eyes sunk in pits. He stared at them, unblinking. "Evening," Greg greeted hesitantly. "Just passing through. Got a map?" The old man's lips curled into a grotesque smile. "You won't find this town on any map." Greg forced a chuckle. "Right. Well, we just need directions back to the highway." "You're already on the road you were meant to take," the old man said, voice hollow, "but not the one you think." A scraping noise behind them made Linda whirl around. A woman in a tattered dress had emerged from the aisles, her face twisted into something between a grin and a grimace. Her fingers were unnaturally long, curling as if reaching for something unseen. Her eyes were voids, black endless pits where pupils should have been. The buzzing fluorescent light overhead flickered. For a split second, Greg swore the shelves weren't stocked with snacks, but bones. Rows of them stacked neatly where candy bars should have been. The air smelled of rot. "We should go," Linda whispered, grabbing Greg's arm. But when they turned, the door was gone. The gas station was no longer a tiny roadside shop, but an expanse of empty darkness. The old man and the woman were no longer behind them, but around them. More figures emerged from the black, their faces stretching into grotesque shapes, eyes reflecting nothing but endless voids. Eric yanked out his earbuds. "Mom? Dad?" The figures moved in unison, whispering in voices not their own. The town outside had transformed. Shops decayed, houses crumbled, and the streetlights flickered in and out of existence. A thick fog rolled in, swallowing everything. A distant guttural growl vibrated through the air, and something unseen shifted in the darkness. Greg grabbed his wife's hand and pulled her close. "Run!" They ran, but every direction led them deeper into the shifting town. The road twisted impossibly, leading them past the same gas station over and over again. The figures watched, waiting. Sophie screamed as something cold brushed her arm. When Greg turned, she was gone. "No, no, no, no," Linda wailed, spinning in circles. But the fog had taken their little girl. Then suddenly there was silence. The town was gone. They were standing in an empty field, their car nowhere in sight. Sophie, gone. The gas station, gone. Only the old man remained, now standing in the distance, his voice carrying on the wind. Not everyone makes it out. And then, darkness. Greg woke up with a jolt, gasping for air. He was behind the wheel of their SUV, still on the detour road. Linda was next to him, stirring awake. Eric snored softly in the back seat. Sophie was safe, curled up against her mother's side. Had it been a nightmare, a hallucination? The headlights illuminated a road sign ahead. "Welcome to Black Hollow." Greg's blood turned to ice. The town was waiting for them again. Then from the back seat, Sophie's voice, small, trembling. "Daddy, where's Eric?" As I lay in my bed with this bulk of a man tying my hands and feet behind my back, panic washed over me. I knew I would not survive the night. I moved into my new apartment with a sense of cautious excitement. The place was small but cozy, tucked away on a quiet street where the neighbors mostly kept to themselves. It was exactly the fresh start I needed. The first time I saw him, I didn't think much of it. My neighbor, an unassuming man in his late 40s, lived directly across the hall. He had a calm, almost friendly demeanor, but there was something about him that unsettled me. His eyes held a weight to them, like he was sizing me up rather than simply looking at me. He introduced himself as Daniel, and I forced a polite smile. Then the small things started happening. I'd come home and find my front door slightly ajar, though I was certain I'd locked it. Items inside my apartment seemed out of place. My books shuffled on the shelf, my kitchen knives rearranged. I told myself I was just being paranoid, that moving stress was getting to me. But then the breathing started. At night, just beyond my bedroom door, I'd hear the sound of slow, deliberate breathing, heavy, measured. I would lie there frozen, my heart hammering in my chest. But when I finally worked up the courage to check, there was nothing. No sign of forced entry, no proof that anyone had been there. Just the overwhelming sense that I wasn't alone. Then I started seeing him, everywhere. It began subtly at first. I would leave my apartment and notice Daniel stepping back into his, as if he had just been standing in the hallway. I'd be walking to the grocery store and catch sight of someone who looked like him just a few paces behind me, only for him to disappear the moment I turned around. One evening, I decided to go for a walk to clear my head. The feeling of being watched had become suffocating. I turned down a quieter street, my arms wrapped around myself, trying to shake the chill that had nothing to do with the cold. Across the street, half shrouded in the shadows of a lamppost, there stood Daniel, still, staring directly at me. My breath hitched. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I forced myself to keep walking, my pace quickening. I turned a corner, hoping to lose him. When I glanced back, he was gone. That night, I closed all my curtains, double-checked my locks, and sat awake in bed, my pulse racing. Days passed, and it only got worse. I would catch glimpses of him outside my window, peering up from the sidewalk below, his face obscured in the dim light. Once, I saw a camera flash in the darkness aimed at my apartment. I ran to the window, but he was already gone. I was his next victim. I could feel it. Then came the night I saw his face on the news. The segment was about a long undetected serial killer, a man who had terrorized women for years, yet always managed to slip away before authorities could catch him. The grainy composite sketch flashed on the screen, and my stomach twisted into a knot. The sunken eyes, the hollowed cheeks. It was Daniel, my neighbor. Panic flooded my veins. My hands shook as I reached for my phone. I needed to call someone, anyone. But just as I was about to dial, I heard my door creak open. I turned, and he was already inside. The force of his attack was immediate. He was on me before I could scream. One hand clamped over my mouth, the other pressing something cold and sharp against my side. His breath was hot against my ear as he whispered, "Shh, no one's coming to save you." He dragged me into the darkness. When I woke, my wrists were bound with thick, coarse rope. I was in my own apartment, but the furniture had been pushed aside, the windows covered with black plastic sheets. My stomach churned as I took in my surroundings. He had planned this. He had been waiting. The first thing he did was smile. Not a warm smile, but one that sent icy tendrils of dread crawling up my spine. "You figured it out too late," he murmured, dragging a chair across the floor and sitting in front of me. He tilted his head, studying me like I was an insect pinned to a board. It's always fun when they realize. The torment began slowly. He would sit there for hours watching me, savoring my fear. He wouldn't speak much, only breaking the silence to hum an eerie, tuneless melody. I tried reasoning with him, tried begging. It only seemed to amuse him. He ran the tip of his knife along my arm, slow and deliberate, tracing patterns into my skin without breaking it, at first. Then came the real suffering. The blade found its way deeper. A shallow cut at first, then another, deeper this time, until blood slicked my skin. The pain was sharp, burning, but it was nothing compared to the sheer helplessness that swallowed me whole. He relished my pain. My whimpers, my silent tears, it was all a game to him. He controlled when I ate, when I slept, when I breathed. I was no longer a person. I was a possession. Days passed, though time felt meaningless. My body was weak, my mind slipping. I could no longer tell if the shadows I saw were real or if I was simply breaking. The hunger gnawed at my insides, the thirst an unbearable agony. He kept me alive, but only barely, just enough to prolong the suffering. And then, on what I knew would be my final night, he leaned in close, his breath sickly sweet against my skin. "I wonder how long you'll last," he whispered, his fingers brushing my cheek. "You're strong, stronger than the others." I knew then that I wasn't getting out of this alive. There would be no miraculous escape, no last-minute hero bursting through the door. My fate had been sealed the moment I stepped into this building. And as his knife found my flesh one last time, I let the darkness take me. The walls of my apartment would hold my screams forever.